Airial, if I could marry her brain, it would be amazing.
If you need anything technical.
She is down to earth. She's fun. She's very easy to network with.
Anything systems oriented.
Just anything web dev techie that I don't understand, Airial has swooped in and fixed. And she's my accountability bulldog.
She is a queen.
Anything infrastructure related.
She is helpful, and she helps guide and answer all your questions that you have about growing your business and networking and getting started.
She gives me life. She just gives me life.
Airial Reynal is your girl. Welcome to the Trep Tech Podcast with your host, Airial Reynal.
I just want to marry her brain. She's a genius.
Hey, and welcome to Trep Tech Podcast. That intro gets me every time, and since they've already complimented Airial a bunch, I'm not going to give her 3 compliments today because I'm the expert today. Airial, introduce me.
I'm going to throw you away.
Reynal, introduce me.
Oh my gosh. Welcome to the Trep Tech Podcast, everyone. I am Coach Airial Reynal, your original host for the Trep Tech Podcast. And I have today with me co-host and the person that gets on my nerves the most, that rhymed, Scott Doucette. But on a serious note, I want to thank Scott so much because he has brought me into the world of podcasting. And that is what we're going to talk about today. So I can bring podcasting into your business and use it as a marketing tool.
I'm fired up about this because I know you said when we first fired up the mics that you're not going to be talking very much in this episode, but I think you're going to be talking more than I am because you, first of all, possess more podcasts than I do at the moment. I've been involved in more than you, but you are hosting 2 right now, and I am co-hosting 1. So I think I have like 0.25 of a podcast. But I do understand how they play into a business and what role they play. And I kind of want to start by saying that every single podcast will likely play one of a few different roles within a business. If it's not a hobby, and like I don't really address hobby casting that much. I'm not the guy to talk to about a hobby podcast. But when it comes to business, you're either using it to grow connections. So interviewing a bunch of guests and meeting people and using it to get your foot in the door for maybe public speaking engagements, stuff like that. And the veteran woman does that for Airial, which is unreal. Okay. So we're going to talk about that. And then you could use it as part of your sales process. So, your audience comes to you cold. They listen to your podcast. They get to know you a little bit. They warm up. And then a call to action leads them into a sales page. Sales page warms them up. Or a community, let's say a community email list, whatever, warms them up, makes them love you even more. Then you make offers and sell them things, and then they love you even more if you did it right.
Exactly.
Respectable. And they get results, they're going to love you even more. And the whole process starts over again, right? So Trep Tech Podcast does that for Airial right now.
It does that for us.
Yeah, it does that for us right now. And so that's the other way you can use it. But then for me personally, there's the information and teaching aspect of podcasting. And I did that with Podcast Bay. I had 3 seasons where I talked to other podcasters about their dirty podcasting tricks and the things that they use to get ahead in life. And I've also used a local radio show to kind of leverage a little bit of popularity in my hometown as well. So there's all kinds of ways that you can use this audio medium to your benefit. And I want to talk to Airial. I want to ask you, the veteran woman, when we built that show, you had an audience of, I don't want to say an audience of nothing.
I was about to say an audience of 0.
Okay. Yeah. You take it from here. Tell me.
I think what really helped with it was because it was very niche down. So veteran women really, because when I Googled it at the time, there weren't any podcasts specifically for women veterans. So I said, it's going to be called The Veteran Woman, even though my guests come from all walks of life. So men, women, veterans, non-veterans, people who have family members who are veterans, just all kinds of stuff. And we don't always talk about the military. I think we kind of tie it in some sort, but it's not always about that. But it really became a podcast for inspiration, education, and empowerment. And my main thing with that was this, it was a platform to share stories. And I know you and I had talked about monetizing it, but it just never felt right.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that. Like, it's like you read my mind. I was going to say, like, you still to this day have not made money on that show. But what you have made is like speaking engagements and radio show appearances and offers on book collabs and like all kinds of crazy shit.
It has been amazing. And you know, what used to kill me, you're like, Airial, you'll start the podcast strangers, and then by the end you're speaking on somebody's stage, you're collaborating, they're hiring you, you're hiring them. And I'm like, doesn't everybody build rapport like that? And you're like,
no. I've literally seen hosts get on their pre-call and be like, hello, okay, so the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask you this set of questions and you're going to answer them, and hopefully you have a glass of water with you, and we're just going to hit record. And then they get in, they do their show, and at the end they're like, okay, thank you very much, it's been great, bye.
No. And I got a heads up to you and your production team, because when I send you the file, I send it with the in talk, you know, when we come in.
Pre-talk, yeah, we got like 45 minutes of pre-talk to cut out.
And then the after talk.
Yeah. You literally give us like 15 minutes on either end. We have an episode like on top of an episode almost every time. It's great. But it gave
so much fun.
It gave me insight into how you do your pre-calls. And you get on your pre-calls like, hey girl, how you doing? And then you start talking. And you guys are talking about like, oh, my kids were like up all night last night and I've got no sleep. And you're like, you know, you'll agree with them, and then you'll say this, and then you'll say that, and then you're back and forth, and then you'll do your little bit of housekeeping, like, okay, this is the format, no red tape.
This is the format, no format.
Yeah, you're like, there's no format, there's no red tape. We're just going to have a discussion, and you can share anything you want to share, and just be unashamedly yourself. And then they get into it, and then in the end, you're like, is there anything I can do for you, blah, blah, blah. And what blew my mind is like during an interview at one point with a very refined guest, like a very refined lady you had, very decorated and accomplished. And for the life of me, can't remember who she is right now. But you were talking to her, and within the episode, she offered you a collaboration opportunity within the episode, you know, and that was crazy to me, just that opportunity. Another crazy opportunity I saw was It's Electric, a gentleman named Afiz K. He sold a fucking electric car on the air. What? I shit you not. He connected a salesman with a guy who was in the market, and they did an episode where they just like literally entered into a sales negotiation.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And by the end of it, it was sold. Like the guy who was selling went and delivered the car the next day. And I was like, that's unreal. Like, and that's just the power of connecting people.
The power of podcasting.
That's only one of the powers of podcasting. That's just connecting people. Like, I've connected with a lot of my, you know, very close personal friends now because I started a podcast or I helped them with their podcast. So from that alone, that is one way a podcast can fuel your business. And it's brilliant. And like what I've seen the Veteran Woman do for you is unreal. Like unreal. It gave your brand such strong definition too, and like really solid content for people to refer to and relate to. And so now when anyone even hears the word veteran, it's you. Like,
you have me in tears because I'm thinking about it, and it's interesting how it started. I just said, hey, I want to have a podcast because I love interviewing people, and not really interviewing, but having conversations with people. And one of my gifts is being able to bring out people's stories, even if it's a story they never told anyone else. So I literally get on the mic and it's like, just start talking. And then I ask questions out of genuine curiosity. And it's been so fulfilling. And I wasn't worried about stats, never been worried about metrics. But now when I talk to clients, I'm like, how did you find out about me? And they're like, the podcast. I'm like, oh, okay.
Absolutely. It's powerful. And the thing is, people kind of do this wrong. And people think that they're going to start a podcast, get a bunch of episodes, create a bunch of traffic, run a cold traffic ad through it. And I mean, yes, that can work, but it's more of a relationship building tool, in my opinion. Like, you're not just going to produce episodes for a year and then go get a sponsorship deal. You can use a podcast in some very impactful ways. And this is like, it's insane because you never know what opportunity the next person you meet is going to be able to present you. It could be work. It could be a stage. It could be like you did collabos in tattoo shops, you know, supporting the veteran woman. So like, you've done cool shit because you have a show.
The tattoo shop sponsored an event I had for women veterans. And then I interviewed an influencer. And it was just like, hey, I heard you're a veteran. I'm a veteran. I have the Veteran Woman podcast. Will you be on the podcast? And he said yes. And that's John Lee Dumas.
Yeah.
And that was my highlight of season 2. I was just like, wow.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and that's crazy because you're now connecting people that you would have never had access to.
Right.
So that's unreal. And that's just one element. Now, another element is to drive sales. You know, the part I just like blatantly said, blah, 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 blah. Happen. Well, I mean, it does happen. But I feel like people have this misdiagnosed idea that they're just going to start a podcast and people are going to discover them and then they're going to like sell 1 million books or go get a sponsorship deal or like, and that is not how it fucking works, people. Okay.
And then if you're acting out of desperation
with
thinking that, it's not going to be fun. Have fun with it. So like Trep Tech for us, we said this would be the podcast that we monetize.
Yep. Because I'm not going to do something that doesn't bring in money.
Right. But we still have so much fun with it, trying different things. And I love your email list. So if you haven't signed up for Scott's email list, please visit podcastbay.net. I did the landing page. I designed it and connected everything. But visit that and click on the red button that says, I have a podcast, even if you don't have one, because then you get to watch the journey of the Trep Tech podcast starting from nothing. Absolutely no launch. We only put up 1 episode when we launched, and just watching it grow and watching the different things that we do to get listeners, increase engagement, put in calls to action, just all of that stuff. It is so much freaking fun.
And for those of you who are paying attention and have business savvy, what Airial just did was exactly how a podcast makes sales. Okay. It is no, seriously, it's a part of a process. So you are probably listening to this podcast for free to gain some business knowledge. Okay. If you love the podcasting element, Airial just connected you with my landing page, which when you get there, it's going to have 2 options. Option 1, I don't have a podcast. That's going to bring you into a sales process. Okay. The sales process is a 7-day challenge. It's going to give you everything you need to start a podcast for free over 7 days. If you apply it, great. If you don't, there's a course option. Okay. And the course option is way more in depth and in detail because some people need a little extra. And so it's there for them. So that's a sales process.
And then if they want you to just do it for them, like the production, the editing, the show notes, that's an option as well.
Absolutely. Right. So then the other side of that is if you click, I already have a podcast, you get thrown into the behind the scenes thing that Airial's talking about, where you see us grow this sucker. But again, every single Friday, I drop something that we are selling every Friday without fail. I make sure. So throughout the week, I'll steer you to this podcast so you can learn things for free. I'll give you the breakdown and talk about how we're promoting so you can learn things for free. Tuesdays, I give you a tip so you learn things for free. Wednesday, I literally tell you how my business is run in a journal format. Thursday, Jacqueline is teaching people SEO in her Letters from Jacqueline column. And then on Fridays, you're damn right, I'm going to tell you about something that's going to help you that I'm going to collect a little bit in the end, right? So as you can see, the podcast is step 1. It's the free content that we promote out into the world. But you'll notice all throughout our show, there's calls to action to work with Airial, to work with me, to work with. So the podcast is then generating leads for us.
We're seeding offers. It's called seeding
Yeah.
offers when it's not a hard sell, but we're putting things out there. And that's really what we do all throughout the podcast, is find ways to tell everybody about what we do and what the other one does.
Yeah, and it's great. And trust me, it makes it easier that we're selling each other and not ourselves.
Yes.
That's another thing I want to put out
It's
there.
all genuine.
It's easier to sell someone you've worked with and love their service than it is to get out there and be like, I'm Scott Doucette and I run a podcast production company and we're great and you should buy from us because we want you to. That it's not, it doesn't work that way. So like for me, I have an easier time selling Airial and not feeling like an arrogant, pompous douche, know?
So I can't just say, oh, welcome to the Trep Tech Podcast. I am your tech angel and goddess, and anything tech that you need, come to me. Also, if you're an entrepreneur and you're building a business, starting a business, come to me. We'll talk about mindset, building relationships, networking, personal branding, and I can do your whole personal branding package. I mean, that just doesn't sound right.
No.
Notice I seeded that offer.
P.S. I'd like to marry my own brain. You might as well end with that because that's so fucking douchey, right? So you don't do it that way. You don't. You find better ways to put it in there. And again, people are so clunky with this stuff and it drives me nuts, but that's a topic for another day. So as you can see, you can use your podcast within your business to generate interest in your offers.
Establish your expertise.
Yeah. And get that done. Get people really invested in you and let them know where the next step is. To sell directly from your podcast, directly from your show notes is very difficult. Okay. And people think they're just going to drop an affiliate link in the show notes and they're going to make a bunch of money. No, It's a little bigger than that. Okay. The podcast is a nice little cushy part of the sales process, and it's called your content marketing. It plays the same role as, like, let's say a YouTube channel or a blog. And some people
or
go,
a lead magnet.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where people get in and they learn and they're nurtured and they feel good about you, or they decide they hate you right there from your content. So it's a pre-qualifier too. Right?
And it builds like relationships because they can hear the difference between writing a post, a text post, is that they can hear our passion. They can hear what we're talking about. They can get a sense of our personality.
Listen, people have hired me on shows where, like, I'll get on a show and I'll give away my gold, like we're kind of doing with this episode. And there will be people who get in touch with me and say, hey man, I applied everything you said, which is everyone's biggest fear, by the way. If I give away my gold, they'll do it and then they won't need me. Oh my God. No. Okay. 1% of the fucking world actually does what you tell them to. And the other 99 are divvied between I need help and fuck no, I'm too lazy. All right.
Right.
So the people
especially with what we do. Yeah. Nobody wants to produce a podcast or do all of the editing and the show notes and stuff. And nobody wants to go in and troubleshoot whenever tech shit happens.
I don't want to set up my own fucking landing pages and emails. So Airial's great for me, and that's the thing. It's like, so people, when I give you all this gold, yes, you're going to be like, oh, here's where the podcast fits. But that doesn't mean you're going to want to do the hours upon hours of painstaking editing that it takes to run the show. So in a way, I'm saying, like, I'm giving you gold, yes, but the people who are not going to go out and do this themselves now know that they can come to me and I'll take care of them and make sure it gets done for them to a level that they might not even be able to achieve themselves, because this is what I do all day, So don't be afraid to give away gold, because there's a very good chance it's going to come around and make those sales for you. But always give people that next step, which is either a Facebook community or a LinkedIn community or a email list or someplace to go get to know you better. Because
people will stalk you.
Yeah, people stalk us all the time.
Yeah, so look at your Facebook profile and leverage the fuck out of that real estate. Like what you do, who you are, your company name, all of that. And make sure you have, I know it's a personal profile, but just come on, be real. And make sure it gleans and beams your personality, because people will stalk you for like a year or two and then say, okay, this is the person I want to work with. And then land in your inbox and like, okay, how do I pay you?
Yeah, and we can do a whole episode on leveraging social media real estate. I think that'd be an amazing one. But you can use it to link back to your podcast. Turn your Facebook cover page into a link to your podcast. And then you're steering people to free stuff, and it's not a hard sell on your business. you know?
Mhm.
So like, that's the thing, is find ways to be subtle. Send people to your free source, which is your podcast, and then let your podcast do the directing. That's where it fits in a sales process. Now,
And it also built, especially the Veteran Woman podcast, it built a lot of credibility for me. So people are like, oh my goodness, you have a podcast? And I'm like, yeah. And then they see that it's on like iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, everywhere. They're like, oh, wow, that's you. And then now it's like, I have 2 podcasts. I have a second podcast. So yeah, I know podcasting. And it really builds credibility, because then people are asking me, how did I start it? How do they get started? And then I always tell them, Scott produces it. So definitely talk to Scott about monetizing and producing and editing and everything.
yeah, and it comes full circle. And this leads me to the last bit. Well, the second last bit. The last one's like a bonus piece.
Mm-hmm.
But this leads me to the using your podcast to educate and inform, right? So like, I'm thinking about podcasts like Blaze Entertainment, okay? Not necessarily a show that is business oriented, but it keeps people caught up on current events and it educates people, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of my know-how, or like a lot of my worldly knowledge, from Blaze Entertainment and The Breakfast Club.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I'm more culturally aware than a lot of people around me, right?
Like me.
Which to me is hilarious. But because of that, like, I know a lot more about issues and events. And so when I touch on a show, I think about that. I think about, okay, how can I deliver this to someone who knows absolutely nothing about it? But also, how can I make this episode do justice to someone who is as far along the path as I am?
And you know what? When you mention that, ask your listeners. Ask your
Yes.
listeners to give you feedback, to ask questions, so you can answer those questions in the episode.
Yeah, because part of giving information is getting information. So you can ask your people, what do you want to hear? Podcast Bay, when it was up, I had a running poll in the community that said, what are you here to learn? And marketing and promotion was like the number 1 clicked thing. Monetization was number 3. But there were hundreds of votes on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of like little click, 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 people going down the list and telling me what they wanted to learn. So
And
I
then
was
get it in their language is,
yes.
That's a whole nother thing. Yeah.
So I was able to cater my educational content to everything they wanted. But the best part was I had a proportion. I'm a geek. Okay. I had a little pie chart saying 80% wants marketing and promotion, 10% wants monetization, 3% wants hosting tips. And I was able to figure out like who these people were and what they wanted. And then I was able to deliver the best of the best information I could. And what that did was unreal. You want to talk about building credibility? I ended up with a fandom. Like, it was
Mm-hmm.
nuts. People would tune in to watch me rant in my tank top about shitty podcasting. Like, it was insane. Like, it was so much fun. But like, the reason why that happened is because I gave away my best material freely with the option to work with me if people wanted. So a soft sell, and they did. So hint, hint, people.
Mm-hmm.
But what it did is it raised my credibility so high because the people who would apply, that 1% I was talking about, did and sang my praise from the rooftops. The people who wouldn't apply but had the money worked with me, got results, and it sang from the rooftops. And the people who didn't apply, listened to it, went, that sounds like it makes a lot of fucking sense. I'm going to do that someday. And they didn't, but they didn't like me any less,
Right.
And then there's a small group of people who started, got lazy, didn't do it, and then blamed me. And I really don't give a fuck. That's not why we're here. So, you'll experience this, but the idea of educating the masses and using your podcast to do it is not about staying surface level. You want to go deep. You want to give away amazing material. And then you will see that relationship marketing piece happen. And then you will see that sales piece happening if you're using your fucking podcast properly. Okay?
And you'll have fun doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Having fun is the most important thing. And that leads me to one of the things that I want to bring up that Airial and I have both done. Airial and I have both used our shows to create a certain amount of local celebrity. Now, I'm not saying we have our own dressing rooms with stars on it and we're allowed to make ridiculous rider demands, although I will be that much of a diva someday. And Airial knows it too. We're bougie as fuck on the inside. Don't be fooled.
Right?
She shows up to meetings with a beanie, but she's bougie. She's bougie. So
I'll be in a fancy hotel with that beanie on.
yeah. So like when you think about that, like it creates a local celebrity. Airial has used this to get on stages in her community, to make appearances at, you know, army bases and things like that and talk to people, to collaborate on joint venture opportunities, to, again, a tattoo shop sponsored her. So as she's getting out there locally, people are getting to know her in the community, which opens up chances to like show up to charity events or get to know people who run the local downtown nonprofits and things like that. Like you get to know people.
And actually it's more than just in the community. And I say that with utmost humbleness, because people be like, oh yeah, I heard your podcast. I'm like, really? Like, wow. And so it's just amazing. It's not just in the community, but worldwide.
Listen, because of your podcast, not even my podcast, because of your podcast, a gentleman texted me a few days ago saying, hey man, I'm in Rhode Island for 3 months. It's not far from you. You should come down and visit.
Yeah, making connections.
Because of your show, not even mine. But like, you know, and I'm thinking about that. Like I've been invited to talk at Podcast Movement, not by the official Podcast Movement people. Otherwise I would have been there in a heartbeat. Fuck yeah. But like by audience attendees who said like, we really wanted you to be on that stage. I've been invited to do MapCon as a speaker. I have been invited to parties in New York. And again, this isn't bragging because I didn't attend any of these things.
We need to get you a passport.
We do, but we also need to make sure that my baby is older and mommy can handle her for a few days, you know? I'm a family man above all, and people get mad at me. They're like, man, you're holding yourself back. What about all these opportunities? I'm like, priorities, baby. Like my daughter is my most important. So like, I love that. I don't go do all of these things. So it's not me bragging, but these are all invitations that I've gotten because people want me around, because I give away all this good stuff, right? And that credibility is built just like you. But when I started my local show on the radio, I was walking into gas stations and people were asking me about Scotland and recognizing me and telling me what a good show it was. People were running into me at Walmart and saying, man, like my drive home from work, your show is my sanity.
Wow.
You know, and when you get that kind of like, you're trying to do shopping and people are showing up and talking to you like that's a next level connection. And it's really weird and it's different. You know, the second you start getting recognized and putting your work in on the local end, you get a lot of craziness too happening. So you can use your podcast in powerful, powerful ways. It's not, I'm going to make 100 episodes, go get a huge sponsorship deal and laugh all the way to the bank. Like there's way better ways you could be trying to do this. And I hope this episode kind of gleans over that a little bit.
Because you can truly make an impact and create a movement with your podcast.
You can create an entire culture.
Yes, and that's what I love about podcasting. So anybody who works with me about building their personal brand, their powerful personal brand, and creating a culture, podcasting is a part of it. Yeah,
and it should be. And I mean, like, I'm not even going to get into how to be a bomb guest and how to make that work for you. That can be a different show altogether. But I think people need a real life look at what a podcast does and how it does it, because there's a lot of bullshit out there and I'm tired of it. I want to elevate the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll probably drop a bonus with this episode of how it would look, like a visual graph of a quick, easy sales funnel using your podcast.
Absolutely. And I think the best place to drop that would be the Truck Tech Academy. What do you think?
Oh, there we go.
Yes. So that's where we're going to have it, guys. Yeah, we're going to have all kinds of cool swipe files about this stuff in the Truck Tech Academy. I'm going to give Airial the content. She's going to make it beautiful because I am lazy and she is good at it. So I think that she'll have a lot of really beautiful stuff there for you to look at so that you can start using your podcast more effectively. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's it for me. I'm stepping off my soapbox.
Are you finally? Well, I mean, I kind of got on mine. I was just like, man, this is pretty awesome.
It is, though.
I am like kind of influential. But in all honesty, and don't be afraid of being influential. Just be you, because people will love you. and the people who love you will come to you and they'll buy your services because really they're buying you.
Absolutely.
And that's the power of podcasting.
Sweet. Take us home, Airial.
If you have a podcast or you're thinking about having a podcast, definitely get in touch with Scott Doucette, Podcast Bay Productions. They are absolutely amazing. They do intuitive editing. So you just send them your show and they will take care of it, get it on every platform possible. And if you need email automation and stuff to go with your podcast, still get with Scott because then he'll connect me with you. But definitely, I cannot say enough about Podcast Bay Productions and Scott. I love Scott to death. And the relationship was built from podcasting. So definitely check out podcasting or take a look at your podcast and reach out to Scott, even if it's just for a little bit of coaching, how to monetize your podcast, how to make it better, how to be a better host, all of that.
Wow. I love it. Thank you. Speechless.
Thank you for tuning in to the Trep Tech Podcast. But if you like what you heard, go on to Apple Podcast and bring her a 5-star review. And also, if you want to check out her service while she transforms mindsets, navigating entrepreneurship, leveraging technology, building relationships while bridging the gap in your business, check out TrepTechAcademy.com. That's TrepTechAcademy.com.